Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Stephanie Michele Sweigart. I am a licensed and practicing school-based speech language pathologist out in Los Angeles, California. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm here today with speechtherapypd.com. We are really glad to have you back for another episode today, and I'm really excited to talk with our talented, creative, and innovative guest that we have today, Corinne Zmoos. She is a musical speech language pathologist in Baltimore, Maryland, and her private practice, Crescendo Communication, provides highly individualized, neurodiverse language and executive functioning therapy for toddlers and young children. She specializes in AAC, musical intervention, so very cool, and Gestalt language processing. So, as a neurodivergent individual herself, Corinne deeply understands how music really lights up the brain for non-traditional learners and facilitates progress rooted in joy rather than compliance. And oh my gosh, I just love that. Rooted in joy rather than compliance. Just got to let that sit. So Corinne opened Messy Happy Music Lab to provide an inclusive space for children of Baltimore to be able to learn through music, process art, and sensory play. So, Corinne, you are a fabulous human being. Thank you so much for taking time to be here with us today. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an honor to be connected with speechtherapypd.com. I love what you guys do.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for making time. I'm sure you are very busy with all that you're involved in. We know that you also have a course on, and you're working on more courses for speechtherapypd.com. And we're going to talk about one of those today. It's called Music Theory and Gestalt Language Processing. And this presentation, what it really does is it provides a crash course in the underlying musical properties of, as you say, the verbal script lines, phrases that Gestalt processors are acquiring so naturally as they are developing. And you explain how to bring intentional acoustics and motivating rhythms into your play-based language modeling. So I'm really excited to be able to talk to you about that today. I know you have a lot of ready to use techniques and activities, as you say, to supercharge your sessions and to really help with Gestalt processors feeling seen and heard and understood. So I'm really excited to dive in. And I think for all of our listeners, because this is a topic so many people are asking about, so many people are thirsty for knowledge and information as it pertains to Gestalt language processing, I think the question that we really have for you today would be, what are some takeaways that speech clinicians can use with their Gestalt processors to supercharge their sessions through music?
Yeah, this is an area that's so important to me because we think about Gestalt language processors for so long not being understood, that their scripts, their echolalia, their Gestalts were written off or even extinguished by many clinicians in the past. What we're seeing now through the natural language acquisition model is the ability to harness the power of these scripts, knowing that all of them have a connection to the present moment in one way or another. It's about finding what is that underlying message beneath the script, beneath the Gestalt. And very often, Gestalt language processors will be drawn to and acquire scripts that have musical qualities.
Mhm.
We might not be able to hear them as easily if we don't have musical training or aren't analyzing what they're saying through musical properties, because as SLPs, we're looking at form, we're looking at content, we're looking at use, but we're not often looking at the psychoacoustic properties, or definitely not looking at the music theory. So what does this mean in quick takeaways for you? If you're working with a Gestalt language
Yeah.
processor, the first thing I want you to do is think about pitch. Pitch is the highness or the lowness of a note, or the highness or the lowness of an utterance. And so you might hear one of your Gestalt processors use one of the most famous Gestalts from the 90s was, a lot of GLPs in the 90s were saying, to infinity and beyond. It stuck with them. It was meaningful. It meant we're about to embark on something beautiful, something exciting or scary. So there's this pitch where we jump up to this pitch, to infinity, infinity and beyond. Now, if you're not musically trained, you might not hear that pitch underneath. My challenge to you is start to listen. Is your GLP using scripts that have high pitches, low pitches, or do they like to have variation? My takeaway for you is, what would happen if you start to intentionally change your pitch to sound more musical? Or if you notice that your GLP tends to script and use gestalts that are higher up, what happens if you join them in those high pitches? What happens if you join your GLP who likes low pitches down in that lower zone? What I'm guessing might happen is that their brain will go, you get me. You're speaking more
Wow.
language because we're in the same pitch range now.
That is so fascinating. I have to say, this, being fully transparent, GLP is like a new acronym for me. I'm like, okay, I know, I get that now because of what we're talking about. And I'm thinking about pitch and the way you're talking about how it rises or it goes into a lower pitch and what that could mean, and kind of imitating that to as a form of connection and dropping below the words to the pitch. I mean, this is all new to me. And I think when I was in school, in my graduate program I'm dating myself, back in 2004. So we didn't, I don't, no shame on my grad school. I loved my grad school, but I don't remember hearing or learning about any of this or talking about any of this. And is this a newer form of education or a topic that is coming to surface?
So the research for this has been going on since the 70s and the 80s. The thing is, Gestalt language processors have such unique profiles that we've needed really robust longitudinal research to see how their language develops. Because of that longitudinal research and because of how complex it is and how each kid acquires language, acquires their gestalts, and then breaks them down over time in unique ways, this is something that's really becoming a grassroots movement now with speech pathologists, and especially for families who have been in therapy for years and they're like, nothing's working. And then they try this and it really works for their kid's brain. And so they want to spread the word as well. So this is something, it is gaining more momentum, especially when people see that this works for so many kids, but it especially works for the kids who haven't had that aha in more traditional modalities.
Yes. Okay, you have my attention. What else do you have? This is so interesting.
Great. I'm so glad. And this, this is so exciting for me because it gets to bridge two things I really love. I'm a musician and a songwriter, and I really enjoy music theory, how music impacts the brain and body. And then to discover these connections and these kids I love so much, it's really a joy to be able to bring these ideas to as many SLPs as I can.
Wow.
It's not just about pitch. Pitch is just one ingredient in this big musical cake that we're baking. And every kid needs a different cake, and they often need a bunch of different cakes. So we got to get good at baking.
You had me a cake.
Yes, now I'm hungry. Another musical quality I really want everyone to start thinking about is rhythm. And not just rhythm, but tempo and meter. So rhythm, we think of like, oh, this has a really good rhythm to it. It feels good. There's rhythm in everything. The reason why rhythm is so powerful for Gestalt processors, and part of the reason why they might not be picking up on traditional word by word or single word presentations, is that when you and I are speaking like this, in this very regular spoken language, it's really hard to predict what we're going to say, and it's hard to hear an underlying pattern. But if I start to talk like this, you might be able to try to guess what might come next, because there's an underlying pattern that fits into some math. We can bring some mathematics and patterns into our language. Gestalt language processors are pattern geniuses. They see patterns everywhere. And so one of the biggest gifts and therapeutic tools you can bring to these children is not trying to force them into an unpatterned speech, which their brain isn't ready yet to take on or replicate. Bringing rhythm and musicality into how you model and how you talk, it fits better with how their brain works. Rhythm's huge.
Rhythms. We've got pitch. We've got rhythm. What if an SLP or SLPA is thinking, I don't have much rhythm?
Oh, well, that's what I hear a lot. And the good news is that we are all relatively teachable, and musical skill is something you can build like a muscle. Now, if I go to the gym for the rest of my life, I'm never going to be a bodybuilder. So I'm not going to get to that level, but I will get stronger. And that's how I feel about other clinicians. You may not become a musician, but you can learn some of these musical muscle memory skills that are really going to serve your kids, especially the kids who you just don't click with or it's not working. This is your challenge to learn something new yourself. Give yourself some new tricks that are really going to serve your kids.
Wow. This is fascinating. Okay. So we've got pitch, we've got rhythm. I'm trying to see if I can guess what might come next.
Go for it. What do you think?
Pitch, rhythm, volume?
Ooh, that is an interesting one. So that is one I've been considering in my research. I haven't found a lot of research that volume and amplitude make a difference, except for GLPs who have sensory aversion and sensory sensitivity. But amplitude, there's not a lot of research that points to that being a critical factor. But good guess, good guess.
Thank you.
This last one, I saved it for last because this is the quality that inspired me to start doing longitudinal research of my own and start really connecting all these dots. The third one is called intervals. An interval is the acoustic distance between two notes or two pitches. So let me give you some examples. So a song that has really small intervals is the Jaws song. Da-na, da-na, da-na-na-na-na. Those are really close notes. And it creates the sense of uneasiness when the interval's really close. I know for me, like my belly gets tight, also because I think of sharks. There are also songs that have big acoustic jumps. Somewhere over the rainbow, big jump. Ba-da. So what I found that sparked all this research and putting together this content for other SLPs is I realized most of my GLPs had predictable intervals that they were in the Gestalts, in the utterances, in the scripts that they pulled from the raw material in the world. I heard a lot of thirds, which would be dun, da. I heard a lot of fifths, dun, da. But the one I heard the most was called an octave. An octave is when the frequency of that note doubles. And the most famous example of that is somewhere over the rainbow, dun, da. I heard so many of my GLPs using this octave jump in the Gestalts they were using. Can I go inside? I want to go here. That's sliding, that jumping. And I thought, there's got to be something here. So then I pivoted my modeling and my work with these kids to include more octave jumps in my voice. The eye contact, the connection, the language acquisition skyrocketed after that.
Wow.
Something about doubling that frequency that they're hearing that fits really well. And once I get my hands on all the brain scanners I can, I'm going to tell you why. Behaviorally, there is a big impact when you use intentional intervals in how you talk.
Would intervals be the same as pacing, or that's different?
Pacing. So pacing would be more so of the rhythm. And I use a lot of that. I use my body as a metronome.
Okay.
But if you do really interesting intervals as you're pacing, you're combining these strategies and it can be pretty powerful.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So pitch, rhythm, intervals.
Yeah. And we're just scratching the surface there.
I'm sure we were just scratching the surface. Okay. So I know you have a wealth of information. I mean, this is such a teaser. I love it. I mean, it's like you said, we're just kind of scratching the surface. There's a lot going on with this topic. If people wanted to reach out to you or find out more about your resources or what you have, where can people go to find you? Are you on any websites or social media, or do you have any links to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So my nationwide facing business is called Crescendo Communication. This is where I work with clinicians, and I am creating an online course all about music theory and Gestalt language processors. This is going to be a huge course where I teach SLPs my method, how to use music, infuse it into their sessions, as well as just a primer on what is Gestalt processing, because I know a lot of people are still hungry to know what it is.
Yes.
And so this is a combined course where you get to learn all about music, learn my methods, as well as learn how I work with GLPs regardless of music. And so that's going to be a course that's coming out later this year, which you can find at crescendocommunication.com.
Okay.
But if you're interested in, and also the Instagram for that is at crescendo.communication. But if you're interested in my more local focus here in Baltimore, I run Messy Happy Music Lab, which is a creativity lab for neurodiverse children of Baltimore.
Okay.
And you can learn more about that at messyhappymusiclab.com or Messy Happy Music Lab on Instagram.
I love that. Messy happy. I do. I love your titles, and I love the crescendo and the picture that I saw in your email where all of the words sort of go down like this so beautifully. The way you're imaging. Yes. I mean, you're so creative and you're so talented, and all of the resources that you just mentioned, the places to find you, we're going to list those below this YouTube episode for everybody that's listening. You can just drop below this episode. You're going to see all the links for what was just mentioned, and you can just tap and go and find out more. And for everybody else, if you do want to take a deeper dive into this topic and further your education, because as it's been mentioned, people are hungry for this type of education to support them in the field of speech pathology, be sure to check out Music Theory and Gestalt Language Processing on speechtherapypd.com, and that is with presenter Corinne Zmoos. So we are so grateful, everybody, for you coming back week after week and listening to all of our guests. They are industry-leading experts sharing their knowledge on a variety of topics. If you want to go next step and you want to learn about other topics as well, you can subscribe to speechtherapypd.com, where you're going to get 1 year access to over 900 live and on-demand courses, and you're going to access those ASHA CEUs. If you're new to speechtherapypd.com, you can access a free course. So be sure to check below this episode, and you can find out more information about finding a free course on speechtherapypd.com that is best for you. If you found this video helpful, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. You can subscribe and be alerted to each new episodes that are coming out weekly. And we will see you back here next week, because we are answering more of those golden questions that SLPs and SLPAs are asking, and we have the answers for you.